All right. Hey there, guys. Ryan Kingsline here. And I have with me Geoff. How do I say your last name?
Sorry?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, let's look right there. So I have Geoffrey Rosins with me, and we are going to talk. Hopefully, we're going to
Mhm.
talk some substance. I think you recently moved over there, right?
Yeah, to Allegorithmic, we have three studios,
Yeah.
more, but the three principal studios are in France, in Paris, Clermont-Ferrand, and Lyon, and I moved to V1 to Lyon.
Awesome. And then and then we're just going to sit here and we're going to look at this beautiful work you did on Dishonored. 'Cause,
Yeah, yeah, I
God.
load the association page, but on this page I have only my work, the work I did at Arcane, but I have older work I did before Arcane, and it's possible to show it too, you know? It's more
Yeah.
about school projects.
That's great. That's great. So I'm really excited to have you here because you've gone through kind of a similar journey that I went through a while back, where you're working
Hmm.
and then you go into software.
Yeah, it's in fact it wasn't planned at all. At first, I was just planning to move out of France,
Yeah.
moving out of Arcane, and I asked first to Machine Games and then Massive and the other studios,
Hmm.
in Sweden.
Yeah.
And then, well, what about Allegorithmic, who was doing the software I was using for my texture? And well, they were interested, and why not? Why not change of a career? No?
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, it's exciting. So what do you see as the difference between what you did in production and what you do now for a company like Algorithmic?
It's very, very different.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not working for video games anymore. I mean, I'm working on software, as you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Uh, when you work on video games, it's more about working with friends. But I guess the teammate I'm working with at Allegorithmic, since I'm a fresh recruit, I do not know them very well for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So more colleagues,
Yeah.
but you do not feel stressed like for video game production. You have deadlines, but you can fail. In fact, you can test a feature, you
Yeah.
can try to develop your ideas, but it's okay to fail. In the video games, if you fail, well, your asset will just look like shit on screens, and people will notice it. So it's harder.
Yeah. Failure's not an option. So tell me, Jeffrey, how did you get into games? Like, did you go to school for this? Did you self-teach?
Yeah. It's a very, very, very long story.
Yeah.
Because you want the short or the long story?
I always love long stories.
Okay. Well, at first, my first contact with computer graphics
Yeah.
was at 13 years. I was playing with my father at Medal of Honor Allied Assault.
Hmm.
And one day, my father took a custom level from a website called Le Site d'Excel 68, and it was like a huge database at the time, for custom level. And I was very fascinated because we were playing a World War II game, but we were playing on a Saturday Night Fever level, something totally out of the main concept. And I thought, why not me? What about trying to do my own levels?
Hmm.
And I get Medal of Honor Radiant, so the level editor at that time. I tried to make my first levels. It was very, very bad. And then Half-Life 2 got released in November 2004,
Yeah.
and then I moved to the Source engine because well, the engine was easier to manage to work with, and I knew some friends who were also working on Source Engine. And then I continue to do some levels. I have some of them on my folder here. It's very, very old things. I'm not showing them on my portfolio, but this is an example of a level I was doing at that time. It really looks like Half-Life 2, you know, because I was young at the time and I was just copying
Yeah,
the style, you know.
totally.
And after that, I got recruited to work on modification. You know, maybe you heard about Dishonored party. This one.
No.
Oh yeah, it's very very shitty because we were just taking resource of Half-Life 2.
Yeah.
We were just putting colors on,
Yeah.
and that we were just having fun. And what is funny is when I came to Arcane, I discovered that some of my colleagues played to this mod, so I was
Nice.
very happy. I also worked on Get a Life. This one, Get a Life mod. It was a total modification for Half-Life 2. It was a whole solo campaign, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot describe you totally the mod because personally I never understood what it was about, but great experience too. You know, we had zombies, we had voice actor for this mod, and what is funny is it was a French mod, but the voice acting was better in English more than in French. So, and finally, I also worked on Divine Cybermancy. And this one is quite particular because at first it was supposed to be a modification from the team under Black Syndicate Ops, I guess. And the thing is, the team showed to Gabe Newell the mod at what it was at that time, something like game convention at Leipzig in Germany. So they showed the game, the mod, and Gabe gave us his agreement to let us work with the Source Engine for free. So we just had to pay for Avoc Physics Engine. And when I was working on this modification, on this mod, well, I got frustrated because I was just doing levels, you know, level design, level building. This one is one of my levels, but I was frustrating because I wasn't able to do my own textures. I wasn't able to do my own models, and after the high school, it's a lycée in French, but I guess it's high school in English. I decided to go to a computer graphics school in Belgium because the one in France are way too expensive. You know, it's about 7K the year, and in Belgium it was about 300 euros. So it was for free compared to the one in France. And then I got able to do my own texture and models. After that, I got released when I was on my second study year of computer graphics, you know. And then I got contact by Game Textures to do some stuff for them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we were just talking to them the other day.
Oh yeah, yes, it's part of the story. And after that, I got able to work for Insurgency.
Mm-hmm.
It was New World Interactive. And what is funny is I was aiming to work on Insurgency when it was a mod, but I was too young. My skills weren't that good at that time.
Yeah.
And I got so I was so happy when they contact me to ask me, hey, do you want to do some models with us, some textures? And I was so happy because it was like a revenge on, when I was younger. So I accepted directly. And what is funny is 1 week after start Insurgency 2, I got an answer from Arcane. I got the art test. I think I'm showing the art test right here. Yep. Yeah, I get the art test, which was with the photo, black and white.
Oh, wow.
And yes, on this size, it was a very small photo, black and white, and I was asked to do it, Dishonored way. So I gave them this art, and it was good enough. So I knew that I was starting Arcane right after Insurgency. So I worked for Insurgency 2 months only. And then when I was at Arcane, be able to work on the Prey, Dishonored 2, Wolfenstein, and another project which isn't announced yet.
Yeah.
And no, I'm at Allegorithmic.
That's awesome.
There we are.
And there we are. That's a great long story. So
sorry for that.
No, that is awesome. One of the things that I took out of that was how how focused you have been on this for so long.
Yeah, it was a very long sprint, but it's like a first love, you find your own interest inside it.
Yeah.
But my main interest in these things is it's more about architecture,
Okay.
Because to become an architect, it's quite hard. You have to be good in mathematics and a lot of other stuff, and you're not able to build your building. You start with small projects, and if you are lucky, they got released. They got in real.
Right.
But in video games, you just do what you want. You have totally artistic freedom. There is no problem with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. My wife is an architect, and that is a very difficult field. So
she is frustrated too.
Yeah, and game arts pays a lot more, oddly enough. But yeah. So having said that, with that story in mind, what do you think is important for people who are looking at this as a career? They want to do this. Maybe they haven't done the modding background that you have. They haven't put all the time that you've put into it. What can you say to people that are looking at this now and they're like, crap, I mean, he's been at this and he's doing this. And I mean, you're at a very high level in the environment arts. So, all of that work got you there. But what do you say to people who are looking to just kind of score that first job?
Honestly, I would say just fucking hard because I'm teaching in various schools in Belgium, not Sweden, Swiss. It's Switzerland and France.
Yeah.
I work with young people who never worked in computer graphics. It's very hard. It's very hard because they know the techniques. You have a good technician in front of you, but it's more about good taste, because at first maybe people are not enough confident in their ideas,
right?
And they're just trying to recreate what they enjoyed, I don't know, in Overwatch, Blizzard style, because it's very common. Or maybe that texture they saw in a tutorial on 80 levels. It's totally normal. It's totally normal to try to recreate what you are seeing and what you are enjoying. And this is something I start with. As I said, the first levels, I did on Source Engine were very, very inspired from Half-Life 2. I was just copying lighting settings. I was just copying the way decals were used in the levels. Mm-hmm. And when you are copying the things you are seeing, you are also understanding them. Yeah. It really helps. And I know that we tend to say to young people to do their own art, avoiding copying their little comrades. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Maybe it's okay. I think it's okay to assume that you try to recreate something, but after, when you understand it, I think it's better to do your own interpretation, your own version.
Right.
And I don't know. Maybe also find a specialty. Because personally, I really hate organic stuff. My portfolio, I do not have any foliage or trees or flowers because I just fucking hate those things. I just do not understand how those chaotic things works. But concrete, plasters, bricks, it's perfect. It's okay for me. It's very very regular, straight lines. It's very nice for me. So just find your styles.
That's awesome. That's great. And so what I think I heard there was copying might be a bad word, which I think Jan was saying copying's a bad word. It might be a bad word, but it's absolutely a tool to grow so that you then get the understanding to expand.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think it's part of the process.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was really excited about, sorry to interrupt. One of the things I was really excited when I was looking at this is, you have this focus on storytelling, and you can see it your art test, right? Like, you pulled an entire environment out of a tiny photo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's normal because, as I said, I did a lot of modding. And I wasn't working on modelization or texturing skills because at that time I wasn't able to do that. My work was more about level design, level building, composition, lighting, and I had some ideas, by the past, and I was just trying to use them on this artist.
Yeah.
And then you have also, as I said, these composition skills.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why, if you look at the windows, the lighting, the shape of the windows is getting drawn in on the floor. Mm-hmm. It was just to occupy the space because without these things, it was too empty, Mm-hmm. Same thing for the Godres. It was more about occupying the space, the ambient.
Yeah.
And same things for the table on the chair. Maybe it's sexy on the photo to have just a table on this lighting, but on the whole scene, I think it isn't that efficient. So I just thought about it's a forgotten classroom and how people's toyed with those tables. The guys who visit the building, or maybe the latest person who went there. What they tried to do with these tables, I don't know. So I have some tables which still in place, mm-hmm. like if it was the ancient setup of the classroom, and then we have some tables, just wrapped somewhere upside down, and I thought it was nice to do that.
Yeah, that is awesome. So what if somebody's looking to build this? What are some of the characters or the elements, let's say it that way? What are some of the elements of storytelling that you think are important for somebody who wants to be a level designer? And then I kind of want to unpack what a level designer is. But first, what are some of the story elements that you think are really important for somebody to showcase as an aspiring artist?
Mm, I think, well, first you have to storytelling. You have the name is well chosen. You have to think about the story. The environment get old by a certain way, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way people lived there, and you have to think about every little details. Even the sorry, even little details like who was this person. It's important, you know, because if it was a grandma or if it was a young boy,
Yeah.
the way he was interacting with those furniture wasn't the same way, you know. Maybe a grandma, I don't know, maybe she's in wheelchair, you know, or and if she's in wheelchair, well, maybe the stairs are adapted to her handicap.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a young boy, maybe he played with I don't know, maybe he used to play in the attic or in the basement, and maybe you can find a little you know, a little campement, you know, with a cloth and what is the name? A flashlight, you know,
Mm-hmm.
something like maybe he built his own cabana, you know, with some furniture. You know, you just have to think about something nice and cool to tell by the environment.
Got it.
And well, I don't know what I could say more for that.
Yeah, so understand character and then understand the uses,
Yeah, absolutely.
of character in there. So that makes sense to me.
Because people tend to just think about, well, I want a note and mention.
Yeah.
A note and mention. What it is about is that it's about old wood, ghost, I guess, uh, dust everywhere, broken things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but it can be something totally different. An in the house can be something totally clean, and I don't know. You can be original, you know.
Yeah. Now that has to translate over into your work in software today over at Allegorithmic, which is
Mhm.
all material based.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm working on the new software
Mm-hmm.
we announced in the trailer, Substance Alchemist. And currently, I'm working on filters for material blending and stuff like.
Nice. And you said substance chemist?
Substance Alchemist, yeah, it's
Alchemist. Great.
yeah. It's one of the new tools,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to wait because we will do a big announce
Yeah.
in few weeks, I guess. So I have to wait if I want to say more.
Oh, cool. Well, I can't wait for that.
Sorry for that.
Yeah. So then I want to talk about materials and substance, but what I would really like to do before we do that is I think environment arts, it's it's big, you know,
Yeah, baking. Yeah.
and there's level designers, there's props, there's modelers,
Mhm.
there's even now because of tools like substance designers, there's people whose job is just look dev for environments in 3D, which is pretty awesome. So how can you explain some of the different areas or areas of the career of environment arts to people? Because just the word level designer is kind of a little confusing, and it also changes studio to studio too. So
Yeah, You're totally right. It's quite hard to give a very precise definition because
Yeah.
each studio has its own definition. Like at Arcane, we do not have level builder. We have level architects,
Oh, okay.
and we have it's called environment artist, but honestly, it's more about prop artists.
Okay.
So as I said, each studio has its own way to name those jobs. Um, I guess the way you are evolving in each studios, it really depends of your skills on the, I guess, what you did during a production. Because at first I was environment artist at Arcane, but I was I was wishing to switch to a level architect. I
Hmm.
was aiming to do level buildings, lightings, what I was doing at first. Because depending of the studios, again, at Arcane, as environment artist,
Hmm.
we were doing only furnitures, assets, and things like. We weren't touching lightings, set dressings. It wasn't our jobs. It was more about level architects. And sometimes you got frustrated because you have your own ideas,
Right.
you have some expectation with your assets, and when you look at the final results, sometimes you are thinking that maybe my idea wasn't that bad. Maybe at this place it would be nice to have what I was thinking,
Yep.
but it isn't your job, so too bad. And maybe this is why some people are trying to move. And this is why I moved from Arcane, because I got tired of just doing props. I was looking for more challenge.
Yep.
Because I was in a very comfortable position. I was doing architecture, I mean buildings. I was doing textures. It was very okay for me, but maybe not so okay for the long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess
And
people.
that's actually, I think Ollie's not in here right now, but one of our boot camp guys is kind of experiencing difficulty working in a company right now where there's a lot of, they're not training him on it. They're kind of a sink or swim type environment, and it's pretty stressful for him. They're
Mhm,
not offering him feedback per se. They're just saying, this isn't good enough. Do this again.
mhm.
You know, have you had experiences like that? Do you have any advice when somebody's just suffering, how they can, how they can work through it?
It's very hard. It's very hard because again, it's all about the mood of the studios.
Yeah.
When you are in a very big company, like any studios with Zenimax,
Hmm.
you think it's okay. You're in very comfortable position. And they hire only people they can trust. And I guess maybe in other studios, maybe uh, there are more rollover. They
Yeah.
try to hire younger people, and maybe they just do not trust them enough.
Hmm.
Maybe they do not give them any chance to make their proof. You
Right.
know, I guess personal projects can help a lot. Because when you got popular on ArtStation or on 80 levels,
Mm.
you feel that the way your colleagues look at you change. You feel more considered, and maybe it can open new doors. New opportunity of career, or maybe at your work we can propose you a works according to the things you did in your personal projects.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's
Cannot tell
actually a
it.
really great point.
It's very depending of the studio because on at Machine Games, from what I know, they used scans. I worked with scans to make trees, but from what I know, it wasn't convincing the major part of the studios. People were more confident by using Photoshop or with ZBrush more than using photo scans. But it was okay. The scans were good enough, and we did good stuff with that. So I guess they continue with scans. But it was just a test at first, and the result was good. So it convinced people. People just need to be convinced.
Yeah, cool. All right, so level designer, level architect. Is it fair to say that one of the ways that we could separate this career of environment artist is there's kind of there's the modeling slash prop slash asset creation, and then there's the side that does more of the assembly, the composing, and the lighting side of it. Is that a fair division?
Honestly, it's very complicated because
Yeah.
maybe you can have one person to manage the lighting in all levels,
Right.
and that was what we were doing at Arcane.
Yeah.
We had Damien Laurent, who was the lead level architect, and he was managing the biggest part of the mood, the lighting, and then level architects were working with the first ideas he threw. I think maybe it's adapted when you work with big teams, to have something to keep something homogeneous. To avoid having too much differences between levels.
Right.
I think it's normal. I think it's normal to split each discipline.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. So thank you for that. All right, guys. So I want to get some questions from you guys in a moment. And then, Geoffrey, I think I was talking to Susan. Was there any substance that you wanted to demo or talk about, or anything that you wanted to present on that level? Or should we just keep the conversation going?
Very. I have some substance, but I'm not. Well, I can show you one of them.
Okay, so then I guess let's do it in a conversational way, because the questions that I have kind of, are so for me, substance is a multiplier and of somebody's skill, and it just makes somebody more attractive for a job. And it's kind of like ZBrush was 8 years ago. If you knew ZBrush and you could sculpt, you pretty much had a job. That's not the case anymore. So I tell people not to sweat ZBrush. I tell them to learn substance. And I've noticed that there seems to be this transition from substance designer with people to substance painter. And substance painter is taking over a lot of the territory. But can you kind of just walk us through, like, what is it that if somebody's learning this now and they want to put their, and they want to put as much energy in one place, should they be focusing on designer, painter, or is it really they just have to do both?
It's very interesting. Yeah. It depends of what you want to be.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to become a texture artist, I think it's very interesting to learn designer. But I know some statistics, and I know that we have about 80% of our users that are using Painter. So designer isn't that used because it's very complicated. When you have people that doesn't understand yet principle like frequencies in a texture or composition or colors, it's already so complicated to understand and to manage. So when you throw them in a software that is complicated to master because you are working with those abstract nodes, those abstract functions, it's a veritable mess. And I think Substance Designer is one of the hardest software to teach. So personally, I would say that it's fine to start first with Photoshop, then some to review some techniques with ZBrush, because it's very important to to understand to get that sculpting feelings with the material. When you are trying to put some damages to a brick wall, when you are trying to sculpt those barks on the trees, it's very important to feel the material under your pen. And with Designer, it's a totally different. You are just working with frequencies. And what is interesting is with Substance Designer, new problematics appears. Like I did this wooden wall, trying to hide those fenêtres, those windows. Yeah, I did this wooden wall, this painted wooden wall. But one of the problematics I never had first was how to create my wooden planks and how to do this beam in the center. It isn't a problem you have to think about when you are working with ZBrush or Maya. In Substance Designer, it's totally different. You have those problems more. So yes, it's very complicated. And at first, when I was working with Substance Designer, I was working with sculpts. I have a texture I made way, and it's part of the teaching I did. I guess it's Stonewall. Yeah, we do first a ZBrush model, and then we import it in Substance, and we see how to improve the Stonewall. I think it's important first to, as I said, to feel the contact with the material. And there we are.
So this is the substance?
So this one is, sorry. Sorry for that.
No, this is great.
Okay, so this is a funnel texture.
Yes.
And first, we work with these things from ZBrush.
Okay.
So I teach them to do these things in ZBrush and only ZBrush. And then we import it in Substance. And then we add joins, we add some pebbles inside, some material in the wall, and they understand first the usage, the utility of Designer in their workflow.
That's interesting. So let me unpack that for just a second. So in Substance, are you recreating this, or are you pulling a normal map or a displacement map or something out of ZBrush?
I'm pulling an 8 map and an ID map, just this texture. Because the normal map, you do not really need it, because from the 8 map, you can do directly the normal map.
Totally.
I think it's better to start with the fewer inputs as possible.
Okay. So an ID map, which is basically each brick is a separate subtool or something. So that makes life easier.
Yep, I can show you the zip tool. Yes, it's just about polypens by polygroups.
Got it.
Nothing more.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, because the usage of ZBrush I'm having is very, very, very simple.
Great.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on my laptop, so maybe it's a bit long.
No, this is fine. This is perfect.
Okay, great.
And it's moving quite fast, actually. My Microsoft Surface is a little bit slower than this.
Oops, Stonewall, ZBrush, and then we are.
I love this exercise. This is a really great idea to help people understand, how valuable it is.
It's very simple and very efficient,
And by height map,
Yeah.
are you doing an alpha grab, or is there a displacement, or how are you getting the height map?
Alpha grab. In fact, I'm just tweaking the document size, to get something tileable,
Yep.
like the funnel resolution of the texture. So 2K by 2K. I crop the document.
Yep.
And then up, some dezoom. I'm just dropping again my subtool.
Yeah.
This way. It's okay. And then I have a little plane that is hidden here. No, it's just a plane.
Okay.
And I'm framing the whole work on this plane, so I get directly the right position of my my stones.
Oh, sweet. Okay, so it's tileable within that plane, which is a subtool. Yeah,
I'm working with, the in the deformation tab, you have the offset tools, which is very useful for these things,
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, it's very simple, as I said.
That's great.
The only things important is to get to keep the right polygroups on your bricks, to avoid mismatch when you import the color ID.
Right. Got it. All right. So, and then if you don't mind, just show people where you get the alpha grab, because that's one of those things where it's like it's an ancient part of ZBrush. It's so easy for them to forget, but it's right in the alpha palette.
Yeah, it's just in the alpha palette. You have something called GrabDoc.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And then you got your height map. I noticed something. Yeah, I thought at first that maybe using, a flat color to get my ID.
Yeah.
If you look at texture, you can do a GrabDoc on depth. So you get your ID and you get your height map in the same texture.
Yeah.
It seems very useful, but in fact it isn't, because ZBrush store the 8 map in 8 bits, and you need 16 bits to get something very clean. And I guess you already saw what happens when you use 8 bits in ZBrush. It's very dirty and noisy, and you have these little stairs appearing.
Yeah.
It's the same things in the Substance Designer. So this is why it's very important to go by the alpha GrabDoc to benefit of the 16 bits.
Got it. Yeah.
And then export. You have I have my little export folder on PSD. It's okay.
Yeah.
And there we are. And I can change. Oh, I can do it directly if you want, because my substance is ready. So maybe I can move a stone just to show you. Maybe we can move this one.
Yeah.
This way, like you're doing something. I'm doing something very dirty,
Yeah.
just to show. Yes, like this. It's funny because I have masking on my bricks. Yes. So I did something totally terrible and dirty, and we'll see the consequences. So I get the color ID, I get the 8 map, so I'm seeing the difference here. I export them, export the 8, export the ID, and then let's go back to Substance, and I'm having, it's computing.
Yep.
It's still computing.
And were you saying that height map, or sorry, the ID map at 8-bit is okay or not okay?
Sorry?
The ID map out of ZBrush, is the ID at 8-bit okay or not okay?
For ID, no, it's okay. It's just about colors, so no problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
wow.
It gets totally fucked. I guess. Yes, it's because the way I'm adding the joints.
Yeah.
I just have to tweak the offset here, and it becomes okay. You know, and I see the
sweet.
blocks I moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an artifact. Yes, because when I was moving my stones, I had a curvature masking, and I forgot to disable it. So this is why I'm having this weird issue on substance.
Yeah.
If I go back with material, yes, you can see the terrible things I did in the brush. So sorry for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love this as an exercise too, man. I can't stress that enough. That's such a beautiful idea. So when you've got this, and this is tileable, and what have you modified in Substance? Because it looks, looks like you got a lot of nodes there.
Not so much. Not so much.
Not
In
so
fact,
much, he says, with
no,
34 nodes.
it's funny because, in fact, very simple things do lot of nodes. Like I can try to do something with you, like a pattern. So, I did a pattern recently from a material I saw during a voyage in Roma. I can show you directly. I saw a question on the chat about a low poly in the brush, but in fact you do not need any low poly because the low poly is about baking, and the baking you just about a plane, so just a grab dock, it's fine, no?
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so the pattern in question is no, you do not need it. The plane is just for the frame, to frame the view on your work, because you put each stones on each corner of the plane. It just something to a reference, a reference of the texture space. Where is the eye corner, where is the left corner, etc., etc. It's just a reference, so you do not use it for your final texture. So, as I said, I did this quick texture. Yeah, so the pattern is these things, This is from a photo I took in Roma. And in fact, it isn't that complicated to achieve. It just takes time. You need to analyze first the shapes, to start with the complex, you have to split each problems into smaller problems that are easier to solve, like, I don't know, those little patch, which looks like buttons, it's very easy to achieve. Looks, I have to start with a shape. It's one of the main more used nodes, the shapes one. Here you can select the shape you want. You have a collection of very simple shapes.
Yeah.
And personally, I work with a cone. You will see why. Because if you want to achieve this circle, this black band, you can do it by using a disk, reducing the size of this disk, removing the tiling of the nodes. So I go in tiling mode and I disable it, no tiling. And then I do a math, this shape minus these shapes, and I get my results, So I put a blend, and then I subtract the shape. And now I'm having my, my band. But I have an easier way to achieve that. I can use a cone here, and I can use a histogram select.
Like awesome, like a ramp.
And then by adjusting the contrast, I can have a nice circle, and I can move, the position directly. And what is interesting is I keep a regular width on my band, because this way very hard, you know, to adjust the size of the circle on keeping the white, you know. But this way, it's very, very easier. So I do the first torus. Now I do a second one, which is smaller. So I just have to adjust the range this way. Now I can combine them together like this. Since I want to keep the white part of each image, I can use the screen modes, the screen blending mode here.
Okay.
Now I'm seeing that the second circle is too close to the first one, so I can adjust the position very easily, like this.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can add the little buttons in the inside. Yeah, there are four things. So well, maybe this one, it's okay. So I have the first little patch. I have a better idea. I can do it directly with a tile generator. Yeah, in fact, it's like, you know, when you want to speak, you make sentence. But when you want to make sentence, you have to learn words, you know. Learning Substance Designer nodes is like learning new words, new grammar tools to achieve a sentence. So a circle, 2 by 2. And normally, yeah, can adjust the scale, and there we are, you know, just with one node. And then I can put them inside the little things I did here. And again, with a screen mode. As you see, those little circles are too fat, so I can adjust them with the translate, and I can reduce their size this way. As you see, we still have tiling, so I disable it this way. And there we are. We have something close to what I did here at first, you know. And as you see, I remove them. I'm having like 6 nodes just to achieve these things. So very quickly, you are getting a very big graph.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's beautiful.
I didn't see there are any questions in the chat.
There are. In fact, I know we're hitting the time right here. So if you don't mind, yeah. Sorry, you were going to say something. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just checking the chat windows.
Ah, got it. Well, I tell you what, since we're right there at the time, and you've been so generous with this, I'd love it if you could look at two people's works, if you don't mind. The links.
No problem, pleasure.
Okay, great. Harry, we need to send the ArtStation link because he's not signed in. So I think you posted it on ArtStation, right, Harry?
Yes, you have. ArtStation.
Yeah, I just sent you the ArtStation link.
Yeah, I was totally panicking. Okay. So let's see.
All the way to the left, top left. So the first one. The most recent one, basically.
I'm just moving the GoToMeeting window. Okay, perfect. It collapsed. So I guess this one is the latest one, and this one are the first one. Yeah, I see a progression, you know, in the image. The first thing I can say is it's very important to do the best you can in the preview image, you know, because this shot is fine for me, but this one, maybe we cannot understand directly what we are seeing. And maybe the screenshot isn't sexy enough to invite people to go watch your art, you know. So I'm going to start with the house first. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay. For me, okay. Maybe the image isn't sharp enough, in my opinion. Maybe it could be nice to just add some adjustment in Photoshop, to get something sharper. You have also to know that some people check your portfolio from a smartphone, so maybe it's nice to optimize your image as you can, just about the size. I guess Photoshop proposes some tools to optimize for internet your image. About the materials, I think the floor is quite strange. It looks like some kind of the furniture you put in a mattress. It's like I cannot tell. It's weird. It doesn't look like wood. It's very, very weird. Maybe I would change the floor, and maybe the wallpaper you are having on your walls. Maybe it's too. Maybe the pattern is a bit heavy. What can be interesting is to adapt the patterns, the decorative patterns you are using, to get a cleaner image, something it's quite hard to describe, less heavy to look, because you have a dirty environment, with a lot of dirt, and your pattern, since your pattern is complex, since you are having dirt, cloudy dirt on top of your wallpapers, it makes a very complex and noisy texture to look at, So I think it could be nice to make an adjustment, maybe on the dirt or maybe in the pattern, because everywhere I'm looking at, on the woods, you have so much dirt. Maybe there is something you can do with that. Maybe it could be nice to, I don't know, the way your wooden wall are getting dirt. It's a bit strange. We cannot tell from where your dirt is, because it's something forgotten. Your environment doesn't suggest that anybody went since a very long time. Maybe you can just do a little dust of layer on your planks, I guess. Yeah, but I would remove a lot of dirt on your walls. About the proportion, it's strange because it looks like a little cottage house in America, and from what I'm seeing, the stairs are as large as in high school. So I think I would adjust a few things about your proportion, And the last things, it's about your wall, your wooden wall. You have something very weird that is appearing here, with your stairs. Maybe this transition here. Maybe you can find a good idea to hide it. Maybe you could use this part of the texture, the upper band, and maybe you could split it and put it at 45 angle, just to follow the stairs. Yeah, maybe I will do this kind of adjustment. I'm seeing, well, about the other project. Sorry if I'm taking too much time. I'm trying to go fast for the others.
No, it's super awesome. Much appreciated.
This one is very nice, you know, because I'm not skilled at all with ZBrush, and I'm very impressed by the details I'm seeing on these wires. You know, this is something very hard to achieve, and it's a very nice one. But again, I think the details you put in your textures, maybe it's too cloudy. I think. It isn't because you add details that your asset will becomes better, you know. Sometimes just doing nothing is fine too, you know. Maybe you can tell about something different, you know. It's a baseball bat used to explode some heads, I guess. Maybe on the end where you put your hands, maybe it could be nice to avoid having bloods because you have your hands hanging the baseball bats, and maybe it could be nice to have you know, the wet of your hands that that goes through the clothes of the baseball bat, you know, some humidity, you know, and maybe it could have been nice to darken the clothes because the blood you are adding on these parts, I guess it's too much. You still you already have a lot of blood on the top of your baseball bats, and maybe it could be nice to have something simpler here, I guess. But the rest is very nice. Maybe another story you could tell is when you put those nails in your baseball bats, maybe one of the nails the dude puts breaks the baseball bats, you know, and running through the wood veins, you would have a big holes, you know. It could be nice. It's as I said, storytelling, you know. It could be nice to tell, and maybe the dude fix his baseball bat with scotch. No, it's not scotch. It's the duct tape. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're saying like a whole, like knocking out slivers out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. All right, and then after this I got one more person I want you to
Oh yeah,
look at.
sorry, I'm trying to go faster.
This was pre-boot camp, so this is before he came into the boot camp. This is what he produced, and then the first image you saw was the one he did in the boot camp. And
okay. What I would say is maybe the lighting is too. You have maybe too much contrast, you know. Maybe adding more ambient, you know, because on this part of the image, it's totally black. We are not able to see anything. What is funny is when you from a further point of view, you are getting some ambient fog, filling the dark area, but it still makes a big a big mass of black. The road, you have too much contrast between your gravels and your roads. It's funny because I guess it's a desert. It's funny because normally you have winds that is pushing sands and dust and gravels on roads. So here I'm not seeing any transition between the two materials. You know, it's something very important when you do this kind of environment. It's to think about how everything works together. You know, you have something which is becoming rusty. It's funny to show how the rust is leaking on other assets. And same things, you know, you still have so much cloudy details. Try to just remove those dirt on your assets, you know, just something subtle, you know. It will be fine. It's okay. Huh? It's okay to add details, but just more subtle. You'll see it will be fine. At first, when I was doing texture, I was trying to make all the details I was adding obvious, you know, because I was looking for people to watch them, to notice them, but you are getting very noisy assets. Oh, this one is the totally opposite. No, it's maybe too simple concerning the materials, but we are moving in a very old works, I guess. Oh, it's for, yeah. If it's for video games, I would suggest to avoid showing this kind of wireframe instead if it's your high poly, because if it's supposed to be your low poly, it's very frightening, you know, because in video games we are we take very importance in optimization in assets. So maybe honestly, do not show these screenshots. It shows a weakness more than an advantage, if you know what I mean. I will
Okay, cool.
see the overall session. Sorry, because I know that maybe we do not have so much time yet.
No, this is great. This is fantastic. So, I wanted you to look at Josh, but then I also wanted you to look at Nalima, who graduated a little while ago, and she's out looking for work. So I'll send you that link as soon as you're done with Josh.
Okay. Oh, it's funny because I was scrolling down. You know, you have this black background, and then you have this white background that is flashing on your eyes. Maybe just change the background for the graph. It's very nice to display it. Personally, I really enjoy it, and it's very nice to share. But you know, it's too bright, and we are not able to read anything on your screenshots. It's very too bad, because it's very nice to do what you did. And the materials it says, I don't know, it's very nice, very nice, and yeah. I don't know what I could add to this one. Yes, this one is maybe a bit too much curvy, but I guess it was more about showing a feature, I guess. Yeah, but this one is very nice. Really love those shapes, you know. You have nice volumes in the texture. Yeah, I can feel it with my hands. Very nice. I don't know what I could say about this one. Maybe you could add color variation, I guess, because people love to see colored materials. Maybe you could try to add a pattern to your what is the name? Une serviette, c'est a towel. Yes, a towel. Maybe you could add a pattern to your towel. You know, a pattern that is adapted to the third direction you are having. Maybe it could be a very nice exercise to do, because this material is very great, but I think you can push it with a pattern. No?
Cool.
You said you had a latest image?
Yeah, just sent you the one. This one's from Nalima, and this is her room in Cuba. It's at the bottom of it. That's Jan asking for a tutorial.
Just about this one. In fact, it isn't that hard to achieve this kind of folds. Generally, for stone walls, it's it's more about a blend between your low poly and your texture. Because if you looked at the floor, I guess it's low poly. You know, we can see some cuts in geometry. When you see like here, right here, this kind of cuts, I think it's about low poly, you know, and it's very useful to add more depth in the texture, you know, to get it is called drop shadows, you know, because on the texture, when you look on at a stone wall, generally you have some weird lighting on your wall because it's still a flat wall with a normal map. But if you're adding geometry on your walls, you start to get those little drop shadows, you know, you add more depth in your texture. So it's very nice to combine the two techniques, you know, you have your materials and then in the texture, directly in the geometry, you cut a few vertices and you add some tessellation, not tessellation, some elevation. Yeah. Okay. This one. Ah, Cuba. It's funny because I recognize the floor because for Dishonored 2 we worked with a lot of references from Cuba, and I recognize this floor because we had references with this kind of floor.
Yeah, she was inspired by Dishonored too, actually.
Nice, nice. Okay. It's very nice. I like the lightings, but the first things I would say is about the ornaments. You put lot of ornaments on your walls, on trims, on everywhere, but they are very flat. You know, it just I think it just miss some depth. You really should put some modelization on some of them. I'm just thinking. It's quite hard to describe because you have a very clean and sober interior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have those walls that are very simple, and you have those parts which are very heavily ornamented. And I guess it would have been better to look for ornament maybe more light, you know, just to match the simplicity of the walls, you know.
Okay.
Because everywhere you are having your ornaments, this area looks more heavier, and you have a contrast that exists between the pillars and then your walls. And I don't know, maybe it isn't. Maybe they are too obvious. Maybe what you could do is putting your ornaments, you know, your pillars, your trims, in the same colors than your walls, you know. So you remove a first difference between them, and maybe by just playing with the lights, maybe with just a drop shadows from one of those ornaments, they will be revealed, you know, they will be revealed just by the lightings, not because they are in different colors. And I guess maybe it will be more interesting to look at your scene this way, and maybe the image will be more lighter, you know. Okay. The wood is fine for me. Maybe it's too smooth, you know. It looks like smooth brushed right here. It's funny because you have those ornaments that are very sharp, but you have these parts that are totally smooth. And another thing is when you build this kind of furniture, you know, it isn't in one piece. You have different pieces that are mounted together to get the effect you want. You know, let me just draw over these things. You know, it isn't just one block. You will have one block this way, and then you will maybe have another block this way, there, and there. And maybe it can be interesting to show that your ascent is mounted just in a realistic way. It could be very nice to show it. Oh, we are seeing some artifacts right here. It's too bad. It's too bad because you are doing a close-up screenshot, so we have our nose right in front of the issue on the table. Okay, this asset is very nice. It's funny because just a suggestion, but each time I'm moving somewhere, always take my camera because there are a lot of good things to see everywhere. Where is my folder? I have a very special folder for this kind of things. Yeah, the Encyclopédie du Matériel. Up. The last time I went to a vintage whatever, I saw this kind of things, and I can show you. I have a good references for that. Where it is? It's just about the wood, the painted wood. Yeah, right here. Yes. You know the way it gets dirty here. If you look at your screenshot, well, it's okay. You have noisy wood. Yes, okay. Right here too, you have some edge work here on the asset. It's okay, but if you look at the way it gets dirty, it isn't always about putting a dark edge. Maybe it's sometimes about doing something more lighter, you know, because you have this asset which is full of dirt, and just on the edge you get those highlights, and there you will have the rough wood that will appear. I have another references that could be nice to share. It's maybe not this one. Well, yes, maybe this one. No, too simple. But yeah, just take some references from real world, and you'll get inspired very quickly and in a very efficient way.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah, you know the way things got damaged. Sometimes you can meet some very weird effects like this one. You know, this one is the photo took in Japan. And, well,
it looks like Wreck-It Ralph, pixelated.
Yeah, it's better to avoid doing these things, but it's funny to see that it exists, you know, but maybe it isn't the best references to use. Anyway, no, it's a very nice scene. I really enjoyed it. Maybe just the last things, it's about the tiles, you know, those dark lines. I think I have the sensation that you put black lines in your texture, and this is something you really should avoid, because those dark lines you are trying to simulate ambient occlusion, you know, between your tiles. But don't worry, the engine, the ambient occlusion directly in the engine will do the work for you. So just avoid, because right now, if we take a flashlight, if we point it in front of your tile, the joint will stay black, you know. And normally we are supposed to see, it's supposed to reveal the dust between the tiles. So again, just avoid black lines.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for taking the time out and for giving that much information and feedback. And really
You're
appreciate that.
welcome. I'm very sorry for my bad English.
Not at all.
I'm not accustomed to these things, so
No,
thank you so much for being patient with me.
absolutely. You've been more than generous. So thank you guys for joining and for being part of this and for asking questions. And we'll get the replay of this up into the network shortly. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below this video. And you guys know the drill. I'd love to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go for it, Geoffrey.
And if people want to contact me, they can reach me by this email, or they can also add me on Facebook. And if they want, I will be really happy to give them more detailed feedback. Because right now with my, as I said, with my language, maybe it wasn't clear enough. But if they just spend some time to contact me by email, I will spend the time needed to give them feedbacks. So
that's great. That's awesome.
Contact me.
Yeah, take that up, guys. I know a lot of times people say that, and I know that people don't follow up, but that's how you grow. You gotta learn from the people that have been there before. Thanks, Geoffrey. All right, guys, take care. Have a great one. Have a good lunch. Have a good dinner wherever you are. And Geoffrey, man, take care. And I'll send you a link to this when we get it up on the podcast page.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your invitation, and I wish you spent some good time with me.
All right. Well, take care. It's great to meet you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Have a good day.
You too.